Joining us now is Congresswoman Yasmin Ansari of Arizona. She's the first Iranian-American Democrat elected to Congress and serves on the Oversight Committee in the House. Thanks for coming on. So you're calling for both President Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to be removed from office for their actions during the war. What specific impeachable offenses do you believe they committed?
Well, first, starting with Donald Trump, I want to really emphasize the fact that I think the messaging and his rhetoric over the last couple of days, and specifically on the morning of April 7th, when he took to Truth Social and essentially threatened a genocide against 90 million Iranians by saying, quote, a whole civilization will die, following days where he said he will blow Iran back to the Stone Ages. That demonstrates that he is mentally unstable and unfit for office. The fact that there is this now fragile ceasefire doesn't change the fact that he said those things, and the fact that he put the entirety of the world at risk with this war. We've seen that this is not a partisan issue anymore. There are many Republicans who were once avid supporters of President Trump, from Tucker Carlson to Marjorie Taylor Greene to Candace Owens, Nick Fuentes, and many on the far right, in addition to Democrats who have called for the invocation of the 25th Amendment, who have called for his impeachment. And look at where we are now after 40-some days of this illegal war. America is not safer. American service members have died. Thousands of innocent civilians have died. There is over 1 million people displaced in Lebanon, and we just saw the deadliest day of the war in Lebanon, with 200 civilians killed and more than 1,000 wounded. This is a man who is a clear and present danger to this country, and I think needs to be impeached or removed from office. And I'm very glad that so many of my colleagues have supported that assessment as well.
There's no indication, at least at this point, that any Republicans in Congress, and they control the House and the Senate, as you well know, or President Trump's cabinet share your view. So how is pursuing impeachment or the 25th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution productive and feasible at this point?
I think it's a matter of talking about it and making sure the American public knows what is going on here. The majority of the American public, in recent data that I saw, also supports impeachment of Donald Trump. I'm sure you saw the New York Times piece that came out that elaborates upon how this war began and the conversations in the Situation Room with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that led to Trump starting this war. I thought it was very interesting that J.D. Vance, in particular, was clearly opposed to the war, and I think that he has a very serious responsibility here. I think he should have done more to stop President Trump from embarking upon this. If he felt so strongly, he clearly indicated that he was opposed and did not think that this would make America safer before the war began. But that is what the 25th Amendment is there for. It exists so that members of the cabinet, including the vice president, can make use of this measure when there is clearly a president who is unfit for office. I cannot tell you how many constituents I have heard from who have been terrified about their sons and daughters going to war. Iranians, 90 million people who thought maybe a nuclear bomb was going to drop on them on Tuesday night. I mean, this is the actions of an absolute madman, and we are only in month 16 of this presidency.
I'm wondering if you've been in touch with anyone inside Iran and how your family is doing. I know that they fled during the 1979 revolution. How are you and your family reflecting on this moment?
I had a very heartbreaking conversation a couple of days ago with a 25-year-old doctor who reached out to me through different channels. He used a VPN to connect and made very clear that 99% of the country does not have access to internet because the regime continues to shut down the internet. And this is a doctor who had actually helped hundreds of protesters in January who had gunshot wounds and were really almost killed by the regime during the protest. But his message to me was that while the beginning of this war felt hopeful for Iranian people because the Ayatollah was killed and potentially there could be a change, as the days went on, the attacks on civilian infrastructure, the impacts on the economy, things have doubled in price in Iran, and the economy was already struggling significantly. The conversation was devastating. He said this has now further entrenched the regime in Iran. We've seen the White House now multiple times between Carolyn Levitt and Hegseth say that there's a new regime in power. That is bullshit. There is no new regime in Iran. It is the exact same regime. In fact, younger, more ideological, more extreme, and more vengeful now that they have seen attacks on their country for weeks. And the people of Iran are terrified now because executions have restarted in the country. So not only did we harm our own country and make America less safe and have more than a dozen of our service members killed in this process, Iranians are far worse off now after the 40 days of this war.
The president has said that after killing the first and second lines of leadership, he believes the leadership now in power is smarter and more reasonable, as he put it. Clearly, you disagree with that, and it does raise questions just given the pervasive ideology there. Before you go, Congresswoman, I want to pivot to another topic very quickly. You recently introduced new legislation aimed at tackling some of the inequities in women's health care. Tell us about that and whether you've received any Republican buy-in.
Thank you for the question. Yes, this is an issue that's been important to me for a very long time. Women's health care has been ignored for centuries, really. Mm-hmm. And so my package is called the Her Agenda, Health, Equity, and Rights. And it's a series of bills that aim to address longstanding disparities in addressing women's health care, especially when it comes to reproductive health care. So it includes a first of its kind bill that would provide reproductive leave and applies to women and men. So talking about when you're experiencing severe pain from menstruation, from menopause, from endometriosis, from cancer and related surgeries. If someone's getting a vasectomy, there's a number of bills that direct the NIH and the Health and Human Services Department to conduct studies related to the barriers for healthcare for women in particular. This is an issue that every woman can understand in this country. It's not Democrat or Republican or independent. If you're a woman, you know the severe pain that we experience once a month at least during when you get your period, and it's horrific. I've had times where I've passed out, I have endured, I've quote unquote sucked it up to doing my job because to be taken seriously. But this is very significant, and I think it's important to have these conversations at the national level. It's one of those issues that has long been ignored, but also really stigmatized.
Yeah, women's health has been underfunded, under-researched for a very long time. We covered a lot on this show, and actually coming up, we're going to talk to Dr. Mary Claire Haver about women's health issues and her new book on perimenopause. Congresswoman Yasmin Ansari, thank you so much. We'll be right back.